Alright, let's go through all the main points for this one. The untraceable infection that affects the mind through visual and sound theory. We throw that out the window. No more Higurashis and sound and subliminal messaging and whatever. Which, by the way, if you want to have a refresher on my previous series, go watch the investigation videos for previous seasons. So yeah, no more of that. Our focus is going to be entirely on the syringe. Here are some of the main points that I want to bring up when it comes to the syringe. One theory that I'm coming up with when it comes to the syringe is that Takano took care of Tomitake with a cursed drug inside the syringe, and maybe some other drug too that made him fall asleep. Put it in the trunk of the car, drove to the location of where they found Tomitake's body. He wakes up, and because of the cursed drug, he loses his mind and kills himself by tearing his throat. Bonus points. Maybe Takano injected Tomitake in the neck where he tore it, so the police couldn't tell where the syringe opening was. A couple of other notable moments when it comes to the syringe is that Rika had it with her, like when she was trying to use it against Shion, and another one would be when Mion and Rena had it and tried to use it on Keiichi in the first chapter. What does that tell us? It means that Rika, Mion, and Rena at the very least know that at the core of this entire plot is that drug that they are aware of, which they took from the clinic, no doubt. What we learned from chapter 5 is that an entire syringe being used means that the target will lose their marbles. Rika acted the same way Tomitake was described before both their deaths. I have a feeling that this drug is definitely connected to how the infection inside people's bodies is working. Shion and many others more than likely had this infection for years. The infection of making people see visions and hear things, make them paranoid and seeing demons. The more stressed they are, the more anxious they are. The syringe with the drug, when used fully like an overdose, can intensify that infection more, as we've seen it with Rika. And possibly, it can very well be that if you use a little bit of that same drug, it can act as a cure. Maybe Mion and Rena at the beginning tried to cure Keiichi of the madness with a little bit of the drug they had in the syringe. We are not entirely sure if Rika was going to use the entirety of the contents of that syringe on Shion, or use a tiny bit of it to possibly cure her. We don't know. Rika. I think you may have a secret, and I'm starting to suspect that you're hiding something that I have not thought of until now. Oyashiro the child and their guardian Rika. I mentioned how the jumping sounds inside the ritual storehouse fit the energy of a child who either is excited by the arrival of these new guests, or is mad that they are there to begin with, or is jumping and trying to make noise to try and grab their attention in hopes that maybe one of them can see them. We don't know. Also, in chapter 5, when Shion let Rika in, and then Rika followed her, the footsteps, that of a blue-haired little girl, are similar to that of the footsteps Shion keeps hearing from time to time. So again, goes back to the theory that Oyashiro is a child. This can go two ways, either one or the other, or it can be both at the same time. The magic way and the human way. Okay, I joke here, but it is close enough really. It's the meta/spiritual way and the fugitive way. For the meta/spiritual way, basically a little bit of a Beatrice situation here. The child is invisible to the rest of us. Rika could be the only one to see them, or maybe the other girls too, except Keiichi and Shion, who have never dealt with such an entity, and then they are surely out of the loop. Either maybe the infection is what makes Rika, and possibly the rest, see them, or something else that would enable us to see them. Maybe a without love they cannot be seen kind of mentality, except in this case, maybe there's something else. The core of this entity's problems, and us possibly arriving at some conclusion, trying to help them or something, will be the key at stopping the murder and the disaster. The fugitive way. Basically, in similar fashion to how I talked at great lengths about the governments and experimenting on disappearing people for the infection throughout the years, the syringes, Biri and Takano at the clinic, etc, etc. In similar fashion to how I talked about all of that, a thought occurs. What if this kid is a fugitive who ran away from the experimenting and such, possibly the clinic, and Rika is hiding this child in the ritual storehouse? Rika and possibly the rest of the girls know about this. Basically a Monster Squad or E.T. kind of situation here.
Good job. My name is Horace.
Rika replacing the lock on the ritual storehouse with an easier one makes sense. She has to check and give food to the child, and possibly the child can leave easier and explore if they want in the village. This can give Rika and the rest of the girls the real truth behind what is happening, or possibly the most that they can even get out of a child running away from governmental experimentation, since there are still signs that even if they were to find stuff from Oyashiro, the child, the girls are still confused about what is going on, nor do they know how to stop it, more importantly. That is very unclear for now. What they do know for sure by now is the drug. They can try and quell the infection they have with the cure, or I guess not permanent cure, but rather some medication that they can keep stealing secretly from Iria's clinic, but only temporarily. Maybe it only calms down the infected person in case they start becoming uncontrollable, rage-like, similar to Keiichi in chapter 1 when he was completely losing it. However, it won't completely cure the entire infection, otherwise Rika especially wouldn't be going through this. Remember when I talked about the possibility that Rika and her powers are what the government/secret organization wanted out of their operation? To create some sort of drug that can enhance people for their evil purposes. In this case being to see into other timelines like Rika. To gain knowledge of other timelines for their advantage against their rivals in the world. A lot of failures throughout the years. The entirety of Hinamizawa being drugged in secret by Irie as the villagers went to the clinic for their treatment from other more normal diseases, checkups, unaware that Irie and his clinic are using the villagers as lab rats for their experimenting. Was Rika's mother a successful test? Well, let's kidnap her in 1981. Satoshi, kidnap to see if they found the right one. It is either they are trying to make a weapon like what I described, making the government/evil organization the source behind the curse over the years, or they are the good guys and are trying to find a cure for this infection that may have existed for much longer, and in that case, we still don't know where it comes from. Either creating a lethal weapon or trying to create a cure for the infection yet unknown to all humans, like either or. Either way, this brings up the idea that if Rika has this supernatural power to see things, so could this child. And while at it, I am starting to suspect that even Rena does at this point. Her talk with Shion this chapter and, well, the volcano reference she made in chapter 3, way before the destruction happened, kinda makes me suspect that she is on a similar level to Rika. Rika displayed this power at a very young age, 5 years prior to 1983, like in 1978 when Akasaka went to the village. Did she have these powers since birth? Or was it something that slowly developed as the infection started taking place in her, like over the years? If so, could it be that Rika meeting this Oyashiro child be the main factor behind it? Maybe Rika always had it, or the child is what activated Rika's power, and possibly others like Rena by simply being near her. She is a fugitive from Irie Clinic in this case, and possibly she was a successful test that the organization wanted, but she escaped, and now because she met the girls, the other girls could be infected more and start developing the same power like hers. If that were the case, it happened before 1978, way before the strings of deaths and disappearances happened in the first place. Takano and her motive, parallel to Shion. I talked at length about where she sits in all of this. Again, season 2/3 investigation video. We don't know exactly, but maybe we can reduce the options to a few. What we do know about Takano more than anything in this so far with 100% certainty is that she studies Hinamizawa in its past. A lot. A lot. Why? Well, I think the motive can be seen more clearer if we look at Shion. Shion was given Takano's research notes to study Hinamizawa, the past, the curse, Oyashiro, the Sonozakis, everything. Which eventually leads to Shion murdering quite a few people in her revenge for Satoshi's disappearance. Maybe Takano saw in Shion the same kind of feeling that she has deep in her. To study and do research for the sake of destroying the village, for the sake of some revenge that we don't know of yet. She sees in Shion a little bit of herself, reason why she gave the notes. Maybe she gave her the notes knowing that it will lead to the killing spree, which in turn can lead to Rika's death and thus the destruction of Hinamizawa. Except not really. Let's talk about that. Rika, the destruction of Hinamizawa, and Takano. In Season 3, Episode 26, it talks about the Day of Judgment, or the end of the world, in case the reincarnation of Oyashiro, in this case being Rika, is gone. It happened in Chapter 3 and 4. We didn't really get to see that in Chapter 1, 2, and 5. I get the feeling that if Rika's death is what triggers the destruction of Hinamizawa in Takano's eyes, even if we didn't get to see the destruction in Chapter 1 due to Rika still being alive, Takano would have eventually found a way to kill Rika way in the future after Keiichi, like, I don't know, maybe next year, maybe in 1984, 1985. How much she needs to create like a plan B in order to get back at Rika, even if she didn't get killed in Chapter 1. We just didn't get to see it. But in Chapter 2 and 5, Rika died, and weeks have passed without anything horrible happening in Hinamizawa. Why? We already asked this ourselves before. It may be that Takano has to kill Rika in a very specific way for whatever her plan is to work. So even if there is the chance that Takano gave Shion the notes in the hopes of making Shion the murderer and kill Rika, it may have backfired in Takano's eyes. I said that maybe Rika had to die with other villagers seeing her mangled corpse, which can cause the chaos that she needed. Whereas in Chapter 2 and 5, Rika died away from the eyes of the villagers, and thus Takano didn't get the result or reaction exactly the way she wanted for the destruction to happen. There is a difference between some villagers reacting strongly to seeing Rika dead at the shrine, which causes a chain reaction, versus Rika just disappearing, which slowly make the villagers worry, but by the time Rika was found dead, that same strong reaction that Takano wanted was just not there. So yeah, if that is the case, Shion ruined Takano's plan. Also, yeah, I am starting to think that in the bad ending for Chapter 5, the one that killed Keiichi was Takano. We know Shion died, so I can only think of her. Maybe Takano knew that Keiichi and Mion would eventually leave, which is a big no-no, because rules clearly state that villagers cannot leave Hinamizawa without being cursed, and if they leave, the rule would begin spreading more doubts in people's eyes. Like, oh, Keiichi and Mion left Hinamizawa and still live happier lives? That is a big no-no. Takano had to kill Keiichi, and possibly Mion in the future, for the illusion of Oyashiro curse to keep going strong, that they were cursed and had to die. Like, that may be one of the core reasons why, Rena had to go back to the village, which we know from Chapter 1 it was described as the curse of Oyashiro, that she was forced to go back to Hinamizawa, otherwise she's gonna keep getting haunted by Oyashiro outside. Like, she had to transfer schools and all that. And that may be the reason why Keiichi eventually had to die, like in the future of Chapter 3, where he got interrogated and then he died. And thus, I don't know. At this point, Rika dies, so maybe now she will think of other plans in the future to destroy Hinamizawa? Again, motive is still unclear. Does Takano want the village dead disguising it as Judgment Day by using Rika's death? Or is it that she wants to prove that Rika's death leads to destruction? It's either she focuses on the destruction of Hinamizawa and Rika is just a means to an end, or it's not necessarily that she wants revenge on Hinamizawa by destroying it. She wants to prove a point that Rika's death will lead to the destruction. That, I don't know, she will get her kicks out of proving her theory right. That she's bananas about figuring out Hinamizawa so much. She wants to prove the destruction coming true so much, just so that she can feel good and say, yes, I was right about my theory. Ah, I feel good about myself. Rika's death does lead to a Judgment Day. Okay, now what about that Rokkenjima Island I keep hearing about? I hear that some demons reside there. So, now I'm thinking that Rika's death, in the way it was handled by Shion, was not the kind that Takano wanted. What other differences can we make between the disaster that happens and the timelines where it doesn't? The differences that made the disaster not happen when it should have due to Rika's death. Difference number 1. Kiichiro Kimiyoshi dies. Maybe Shion killing him ruined her plans entirely. Maybe Kiichiro was an important part where Rika has to die and Takano is like, okay, now she's dead. Kiichiro, time to move to phase 2. And then the soldiers start rolling in and operate their secret mission under the guise of volcanic gas. Maybe Kiichiro was someone special to Takano, and his death really did a number on her emotionally. Man, you know, we've seen and heard about Kiichiro being quite sweet to people, like Rika and Satoko, giving them a home to stay in, Shion and Mion, but now that I'm adding Takano into the mix, I'm starting to think that Kiichiro is quite a killer with the ladies. Difference number 2. They never managed to retrieve Rika's body. Seems to be like the most logical one. In chapter 3/4 and other timelines, the disaster happens where Rika's dead body is displayed in public, like right there at the shrine. So it can be possible that not only did Takano want her dead, but maybe the organization wanted to retrieve her body too for the sake of continuing the experimentations, or get their ultimate weapon out of her body to use it since she would be considered a success. They can get that power for them, dead or not. Whereas in chapter 2 and 5, her body was hidden by Shion, and by the time her dead body was discovered, the police took care of that, so it was too late for anyone else to nab her. I started looking at the credits for chapter 3, though, where they listed the victims and their status. Possibly murdered at the shrine. As far as I'm aware, this is the only information we got officially in the end credits of Rika's status, like after we saw her dead at the shrine. Now, one can assume that, oh, the police eventually discovered the body and therefore they can confirm she was dead. But that means the body had to be left there to begin with for the police to confirm it, like right there. Otherwise, if Takano or the secret organization took the body, the police would have deemed Rika as missing, like the others on the list in the credits. So, how does this make it any different from how the police found Rika's body in chapter 2 and 5, if her body is still left for the police to find it in chapter 3 and possibly 4? Like, it surely makes you think that Rika's death doesn't always trigger the destruction, and even if the body was there for easy pickings, Takano and /or the secret organization don't care about taking her body for future experimentation. So, what the hell is it? What are the conditions? Is it that Takano has to kill Rika with someone else right there to notice the murder and confirm 100% that, yes, you have surely killed Rika with your own hands, Takano. Well, time to destroy the village now. Like, why does it matter? Was it that the supposed boss of the evil organization wanted Takano to prove herself in front of them by killing Rika? I have no idea. The Sonozakis, the green herring. Yeah, so when Mion told Shion after the nail punishment that the family had nothing to do with the disappearance of Satoshi, it was another one of those moments where I told myself, yep, I do think so too. And the end where Mion and Shion had their last talk about the same topic in more detail at that point, that basically seals it. Sonozakis had nothing to do with the murders and disappearances, except to use them to project an image of power that they are the ones that did it, even though it is not true. It's just, it was too easy of an idea. It's just too obvious. It's a murder mystery. You gotta give some much more complicated culprits to find, right? The problem is that Higurashi is now making me look like even more of a conspiracy nut, thinking about the government and secret organizations and all that. Listen, I ain't gonna repeat myself. Once you bring in men in suits and a doctor at the end of chapter 1, how could I not think that is the case? Have you read Root Double? Am I ever gonna stop referencing that story, which nobody else on planet Earth except me read it? Or it can be just Takano, or both. Again, previous investigation parts, I'm not gonna go through that again. It can be one of them, it can be both, who knows. The Love Square. So, yeah, it would seem that chapter 5 proved me right like 100% on the whole, Satoshi being the reason Shion did all this. I have mentioned in the last investigation part. It would seem that Shion had a crush on Satoshi. He disappeared, she did the killing spree, Shion was also jealous of Mion for loving Keiichi, and Shion had the love of her life gone. And I guess a small detail that was shown at the end of chapter 5 was that Mion also had a bit of a crush on Satoshi before. The only thing that apparently we can throw out the window is that idea of how Satoshi went inside the ritual storehouse. I mentioned before that maybe Mion had Satoshi go inside, so as punishment for his disappearance, Shion did the same with Keiichi. Apparently that ever happened. Shion going inside the storehouse with Keiichi was never part of her evil plan. As surprising as that may seem, since the rest of the chapter afterwards was nothing but Shion planning everything. She grabbed Keiichi and went together because she truly did want to split the guilt with someone instead of being caught only herself. This page that I made? Well, I guess I wrote it with the idea that Shion was enacting revenge on Mion more than anyone, but nah, for the most part, Shion had her eyes on the entire family. Or, okay, in retrospect, there is a lot of that jealousy too. Even if the murder spree was not quite done with Mion in mind to get at her for pursuing Keiichi, and is more to get at the three families that enacted the curse system all these years, it is obvious that the jealousy was something that added fuel to the fire once Keiichi entered the picture. Shion compared Keiichi to Satoshi a lot. As polar opposites as they may be, a boy is a boy. That, and I look back at the chapter, there was this line during the ritual storehouse part, which now I remember. It was in season 5 episode 13. Since the boy I loved disappeared last year because of the curse, maybe Mion's love should disappear this year. Ah! Fucking called it! Look at this goober. And there was this moment in the end of chapter 5 where Mion says she also likes Satoshi. Let's not forget that the switcheroo that I theorized proved to be true in the second half of chapter 2. For the first half of chapter 2 though, kinda? It does seem that this first half was skipped for the most part in chapter 5, skimming through the days when Mion and Shion spent time with Keiichi. Obviously Shion played around with Keiichi's mind, making him think that the person in front of him was Mion, but in fact it was Shion. I mean, look no further when we had that hilarious moment in the toy shop in chapter 2. Like seeing Mion and Shion in one room for the first time. But we never really got to see the flip side of Mion purposefully disguising herself as Shion to act more feminine in front of Keiichi, as I theorized in last parts. In retrospect, I'm starting to think that maybe the Shion that we see for the first time at Angel Mort when Keiichi visited the place with his father, that was Shion. I was thinking that maybe Mion switched with Shion so that she can meet Keiichi there, but I'm starting to think that may not be the case, for the simple fact that Keiichi going there with his father kinda happened on a whim. Like, Mion could not have known that Keiichi would go there that night for her to act her supposed feminine act plan. That could very well have been Shion just doing her usual Angel Mort work. Although I do still strongly believe that this Shion who brought the bento to Keiichi at home was Mion. It's just too weird for it to not be the case. Like, the evidence is still there. So I do believe Mion switched with Shion for at least this moment. Although, in retrospect, it feels like kind of a stupid plan. Cause, okay, you switch with Mion to act more feminine and maybe give yourself a boost of confidence in front of him to give him the bento, but you are literally throwing Keiichi in the true Shion's arms by pretending to be what is seen as a more appealing feminine girl version of you. Like, you're shooting yourself in the foot by now pushing Keiichi into thinking of Shion more than you. It's as if you are that one girl in high school that is jealous that the boy you have a crush on is spending time with this other girl, and you want that boy for yourself. So you disguise yourself as that other girl to have sex with the boy that night. Even though now your chances of being with that guy in the future becomes more slim because that boy thinks he had sex with the other girl. Actually, you know what? I think I may have a solution to this. I think I may have like a solution that will satisfy like all of us and feels like the most natural in all of this. I just thought about this, so hear me out. Mion decides to work extra hours after school, which would include, in this case, being working at Angel Mort. It's not necessary that Shion is the only one who worked at Angel Mort. It very well could be possible that Mion worked at Angel Mort as well. So she decides to go to Angel Mort that night. She puts on her maid dress and all that, not tie her hair in that case, and then suddenly, Keiichi just comes in with his father at Angel Mort that night. And Mion is like, what? What the fuck? What is Keiichi doing here? Oh god. And then she is trying to think of how to deal with this situation because Mion doesn't want to get caught by Keiichi in such a embarrassing outfit and all that. She would keep it a secret and all that. So it's either she runs away from Angel Mort, or she's thinking for a second, what if I were to pretend that I am my sister? Because she doesn't have her hair tied up, so she could go forward and say that she's actually Shion. And because of this discussion, like after Keiichi left, she's thinking, well, this was surprising. Yeah, she felt kind of good. Like Keiichi was looking at me in a different way. Maybe I'm liking this. Like, this is surely a more feminine version of myself that Keiichi would like. What if I were to use it a little bit more? And thus the bento situation follows like afterwards and so on. The rest is history. I think like that would be like the most natural way of describing this, to the point where Mion doesn't necessarily think to disguise herself as Shion from the get-go to try and fool Keiichi and make herself more feminine. It just popped into her hands, and because of this opportunity, it made her think, maybe this isn't that bad. Maybe I should do this more often to feel more appreciated by Keiichi. So yeah, there's that. Shion's disproven, but not quite, curse system. We saw Shion's thought process for this curse system that she thought of, where it is more complexly made. Audio doesn't have to quite order specific people to murder, but it is left to the villagers' free decisions to decide who gets to be murdered based on the vibe of things as of late. Even if audio does not say anything, somewhere, someone, a villager, will deal with a problematic person by killing them or disposing them. No further communicating. It can be anyone who can pull it off. Sometimes it can be strategized in a group, but ultimately when the deed is done, no one in the village will know who did it and how, not even Audio herself. This, as I stated in a chapter, made things even more complicated for me, and since I have been a firm believer of a secret entity outside of Hinamizawa being responsible, I am glad that, to me, Mion put one final nail on the coffin on that one by the end of chapter 5. Well, not quite. I do still think that Keiichi's murder of Teppei in chapter 3 was hidden by the girls. So at the very least, in that particular case, the culprit, Keiichi, was helped in hiding the murder, and the rest of the village and the police will be none the wiser. But I guess this brings up a point that if this case happened in Chapter 3, and while I kept hammering on about Takano and secret organizations being part of the reason these deaths and disappearances happen, who's to say that the girls have not done this before in previous years? Did Rika kill her parents and together with the girls they hid the murder? Did Satoko have anything to do with her parents' deaths? Cause let's not forget that we have Satoshi's murder case of Tamae. It feels obvious that he did it, as far as evidence points to. So, who's to say that the girls couldn't have done the same? How much were the girls involved in the murders of previous years? How much is them, and how much is Takano and the external forces? And that we still don't know yet. Well, I guess this is it. I don't think I have any more power left in me to do another one of these investigation sessions. This will be the last one.